Yep. Give me a nod when you're ready.
Like
Shooter's ready. Stand by.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Bullets and Bourbon. I'm joined by my co-host Frank Gow, and I'm also with a good friend of mine, somebody I've known about 14 years now, 13 years, Chris Singley. He's currently the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, but he and I go back to 2011 when we were both stationed at the School of Infantry. He quickly became a mentor who allowed me to have opportunities that paved the way for my career, taking billets which are usually reserved for individuals in those specific jobs. We were stationed together again in 2017 in Bahrain, where Chris served as the first sergeant, and his leadership continued to shine as he focused on the Marines and ensured they developed not just as Marines, but as citizens to our great nation. Chris is currently serving as the senior enlisted advisor to the commanding general of the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab, where his skills not just in leadership, but as an infantry Marine are on display. Chris, I wanted to take this time to thank you for coming on the show, and if you could, please introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, take some of the fluff out of that build up there. It might have been a bit extra, but so as you said, Chris Singley, I'm originally from Millersville, Georgia, and we've changed the title now for Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps and the Joint Force to mirror. It's the Command Senior Enlisted Leader at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. I think, and I agree with the change, kind of taking the advisor part out of it, which doesn't necessarily put as much responsibility for leadership and development on you because, you know, titles do have some meaning. So, yep, that's the current billet as of about the middle of April. Just came here I spent the last 2 years in Okinawa with a 4th Marine Regiment as the C-Cell there.
Okay. So, we're not necessarily going to be talking about competition shooting or anything like that because Chris has zero experience in that regard. But where he does have a lot of experience is hunting. That's one thing like he always kind of talked about whenever we were infantry school instructors together. And then like, you know, whenever he got stationed in Colorado, that was another thing. And then, you know, Okinawa was his big break from hunting for a bit there. But we wanted to talk to him about hunting and the processes he goes through. And then we're going to talk about his job at the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. But, you know, to start it off, how did you get your start in hunting? Was it something that you grew up doing or did you start later in life?
Definitely grew up doing. I still have, I think we all have core memories from our youth. I have a core memory of my parents, I grew up on 5 acres and we had a barbed wire fence in the backyard, and of handing my mom my clothespin rubber band gun before I crossed the fence because I knew gun safety said you couldn't cross the fence with a loaded gun. So even though it was a rubber band gun and I was about 4 years old. But yeah, I started probably with squirrels and probably being the bird dog for my dad, fetching doves in a dove field. And, you know, my first hunting on my own was for deer, which is what I've done most of my life is whitetail deer. But whitetail's now probably 3rd or 4th on my list of most enjoyable hunting pursuits. And I've kind of grown into enjoying other stuff now.
Well, your number one now, what is turkey?
Yeah, turkeys. For sure. Turkey season did just end, so maybe it'll slide back when I do something else. But I'd say turkeys are number one.
Are you going to be taking the time for fall turkey?
I'm not really a fall turkey fan. It's spring turkey, birds gobbling, the interaction of calling to birds that are calling back to you and seeing that process is more fun to me than flocks of turkeys, you know, kind of grouped up and moving around the woods in the fall time.
No, that makes sense. I myself kind of got started hunting later in life, you know, growing up in the city of Miami, never really had the opportunity. My Uncle King, I always told him, I was like, hey, I want you to take me hunting. Never fricking happened. But I started while at SOI, you know, kind of with Chris Sanders and Russell. Those two kind of got me into it, and then always hearing your stories, and then whenever you were out duck hunting at the time, or you know going to check areas for ducks, I remember tagging along with you some out there as well, and we were in the perfect area just because we lived in the field, so we knew where everything was. But when you're preparing for a big hunt, what is the preparation for that hunt like? For instance, you're traveling out to Colorado later this year. What is your long plan prep process all the way up to the hunt?
Sure. Well, there's a few parts to that. First was just simply getting drawn for the tag, and there's some research for Western states on how their tag draw allocations work. And I was drawn for a unit I want in Colorado, so now I'll probably spend multiple waking hours for the next couple of months on OnX maps, doing all the e-scouting I can, more to eliminate areas I don't want to waste my time in, and then kind of narrow down to a few big core areas so that when I do get out there in September, I have some areas to focus on. Next is Colorado. It's just a little bit more elevation than here, and I'm hunting a more high alpine unit, so I expect to be in the probably anywhere from 9 to 12,000, 11,000 feet elevation range. So a lot of hiking under load as far as physical prep. I think there's nothing you can do to replace just carrying something heavy on your back to get ready for going out to the mountains. But also some Olympic lifts, squats, deadlifts, stuff like that, just to work on the core and my legs, because they'll get used a lot. And then finally, this is an archery hunt for me. So hunting in Colorado, elk, they're like I'm going to equate them to call them an 800-pound turkey, because you call September is during the rut, so it's a lot of calling, trying to move to elk. So there's also a chance of you're not going to have sitting still in a ground blind in a tree stand like deer hunting when you're getting ready to draw your bow and shoot. So trying to do a little bit more of different shooting conditions, shooting positions, different stress involved in the shoot, just for the low altitude or the low oxygen at altitude, making me a little more winded just from walking 100 yards up there, or the stress of an animal that size being within bow range if I get fortunate enough to have that happen.
No, it sounds like a lot of the prep that we go through with competition. I think there's a lot of parallels between combat, competition, and even just hunting. They all kind of complement each other in that respect. Um, you talk about hiking. What's some hiking distance that you're planning on doing in preparation? Are you going to take that out to like the national forest and go hike out there, or just stuff within Quantico?
The focus will be around here just because of ease, but absolutely, I plan to do some like overnight weekend backpacking trips in the forest. Something to where, one, elk hunting, I can't be too far from the truck just because, anything I kill, I have to carry back to the truck. So that's obviously a factor. But that may still mean even, several miles in a day. So I think my basic kind of guideline for myself is probably the 3 to 4 miles from my vehicle is maximum I'll take a shot. But for I don't mind doing a 15-mile in a day hike to prep, and maybe, a long weekend doing 30 to 40 miles with camping in between as well to prep for the trip itself. And I'll probably do that over a few weekends this summer.
Whenever we're kind of on the subject of hiking now, and I mean, I'm kind of getting back into some of that myself, but whenever you're hiking on your own like that, are you doing like a true like Marine Corps hike pace and trying to keep a certain cadence or speed, or are you just kind of moving with an intent to raise the heart rate, but not kind of going at Marine Corps pace?
Yeah, I don't pay enough attention to things like heart rate and what zone I'm in. I just go. And I tend to be able to hike pretty fast, and I shoot for a distance, not a time, honestly. So probably faster than general Marine Corps hike pace, just for, it's better conditioning that way. In March, while I was out in Okinawa, I did Bataan Death March, which they host one in New Mexico each year as a memorial march for Bataan Death March from World War II era. But you can do a virtual event anywhere in the world. So I think we did it's 26 miles. I think 40-pound load is the heavy category if you're doing that. And I want to say my group I did that in, we're about 7 hours and 20 minutes to finish that, which
Oh,
is
that's
faster than Marine
fast.
Corps pace. Yeah. So yeah, I did some prep work for that where every day for 30 days, I wanted to hike a minimum of 5K. And my goal was to get that done in 50 minutes. So that rough pace, about 5K an hour, which usually slows down a little bit once you get more than, say 10 to 15K in, but at least starting off there, I don't know. I find it easier to keep that pace throughout.
Now, kind of going back to the hunting aspect of it, what are some of your comfortable engagement distances for you with rifle when harvesting an animal?
So it depends on the animal first. And because every animal is a little bit different as far as the what's an actual size of the kill zone of an animal, or the where the vitals are that you can effectively kill it. I've hunted moose in Alaska. I'm a little bit more comfortable. Moose out to 500. That's a big animal. I mean, they're the size of horses. So it's not that hard. You said the term as we were warming up here, minute of animal. Minute of animal is a little bit bigger on a moose that stands like 6, 7 foot tall. Whitetail is probably 300 yards. For this archery elk hunt, depending on the scenario, if it's broadside, I think I'm probably in the 50-yard range, maybe out to 60 if it's the right conditions with no wind and I'm nice and steady in a good standing position for shooting. Yeah, and I think elk, I'd do the same thing, roughly 500. I've antelope hunted out west before, and they're just a lot smaller. And there are people who like to do long range on those, but I'm not comfortable with it. I'd rather make sure that have the highest degree of certainty possible, I should say, that when I shoot, that it's going to be a fatal hit. And I think the longer ranges you shoot at, unless you're really good at your wind calls and you really know your rifle, you start to the probability starts to go down pretty quick, and probability of error goes up.
What kind of caliber are you using for, some of those animals?
So whitetail and antelope, I primarily hunt with a 6.5 Grendel now. I found that to be a great whitetail round. For elk and moose, I've hunted with a 300 short mag, and I actually hunt with a 6.5 Creedmoor for the couple of mule deer hunts I've done, which I haven't shot a mule deer yet, so I can't tell you how effective that would be. But 300 short mag has killed moose for me. I'm completely confident in that round on those. But yeah, so those are kind of my three main rounds, or calibers, if you will.
And
It froze up. Do I have you?
Yep, you got me. So I already kind of know the answer to this, but do you true your optic at different distances?
No. So one, as I've been in Okinawa for the last couple of years, so zero rifle anything for the last few years because of that. But so a couple of things that I worry about a lot when I'm prepping my rifle. One is the mounting of the scope. I just, at the end of the day, really leveling that out and making sure that's right. Like if I go to shooting courses, and I got a friend who runs some courses, and the first thing he does for everybody, take the scopes off and remount, just to make sure everything's perfectly level. That way, at least one thing is out of the way as a known right, so you don't have to worry about that being something causing errors later on. And I'll be honest, I really like chrono on a rifle. I've only used lab radar in the past. I know Garmin's got one now. It was barely coming out when I moved, so I haven't seen it. But at the end of the day, for me, having good data, and I've used Strelock in the past for my ballistic app. And there may be better stuff out there now, but I always, I had all my rifles loaded into Strelock with the rounds I shot, and I had real good success with that for using that to do my holdovers or adjustments on the scope, whichever one I was going to do. Yeah, that's the basic process I've used. That and a pretty good rangefinder. I'm not in the realm of having my rangefinder tied into my scope yet, or I just have a Leica rangefinder that tells me the range and then I make the adjustments. But I may have to upgrade one of these days to the 21st century for some better technology.
I mean, it's all good and everything. I use binocular rangefinders, and I just plug the data right into my phone on applied ballistics, and it works great. Strelock, for a lot of three gunners, they use Strelock. They swear by it. You just can't download it anymore, which is unfortunate because it gives you so much information, but it's only as good as the information that you put in it, like most things. But I think one of the correlations we can make between competition hunting, we take preparation extremely serious whenever it comes to figuring out where there could be a possible error, but just making sure everything is extremely accurate, getting our chrono data and just getting that good zero. I'll spend 45 minutes to an hour just making sure everything's zeroed properly and all that data is where it needs to be. And especially anytime I change any lots of ammunition, or let's say I'm reloading for long range and I utilized all that and I just loaded up about 100 more rounds. I'll take those rounds, even though the powder and everything else is the same. I'll just go double check and make sure everything is hitting correctly. But you told me that you live for turkey hunting. It's one of your favorite things to do, spring turkey. And this year, your season started out extremely promising. Day one, you went out there and you got one in the national forest on public land. The second day, we both got a big tom within 50 yards of our position, but it didn't come any closer. How do you stay motivated even during the times when you don't harvest or even see an animal?
Well, the first question is, how did I prevent myself from shooting that turkey? Because I had a sighted in shotgun and you had something with no bead on it. So I was trying to get that bird closer for you. So the real question is, how was my willpower so strong as to stop myself from doing that?
You should have taken the shot.
No. But I wanted to read something to you. There's it's the saying, if you want to learn something new, read an old book. There's a book by a guy named Colonel Tom Kelly. He wrote it in, I think, the early 70s. And it's called 10th Legion. It's about turkey hunting. And the quote is, "I do not hunt turkeys because I want to. I hunt them because I have to. I would really rather not do it, but I am helpless in the grip of my compulsion." It's a great turkey hunting book. And there's one other quote I'm going to read here in a second too. But it's fun to kill them. Obviously, it's great. I love eating them. They're great tasting wild game. But at the end of the day, there's a saying that's old and wore down because it's true, and that's it's called hunting, not killing. It's springtime is a fun time to be in the woods. Like everything's starting to green back up. You're starting to hear more stuff out there. It's not you're coming out of the dead of winter where everything's gray and dark. Stuff's starting to grow again. Turkeys are hopefully gobbling in the morning, that's a win. If you don't see one, if you can at least hear them gobbling, that's fun. But they're also, it's a more interactive thing. So unlike deer hunting, where if you're not seeing anything, you're still just sitting there in one spot for a couple hours, at least in the way most of my deer hunting growing up was. And that's just not very exciting when nothing's going on. With turkey hunting, I can move. I can go to the next ridge over and try to listen for a gobble. I can, do something else. I can start hunting mushrooms if it's a really bad turkey time. There's other things going on. So that's the main thing for me. And then the next part of that I was going to read from that book, just to talk about turkey hunting, is from Colonel Kelly again. "The first turkey that ever came to me on the ground did it a long time ago. I sat there with my hands shaking and my breath short and my heart hammering so hard I could not understand why he could not hear it. The last turkey that came to me last spring had exactly the same effect. And the day that this does not happen to me is the day that I quit." So that's kind of it right there. It's, if you don't get excited with that bird's head turning bright red, white, and blue and, puffed up, strutting. As a matter of fact, I think when that bird came in, your initial reaction was go, "There he is," and point to him. And I'm trying to put your hand down because, they've got really good vision, and that doesn't really help seal the deal on them. But it's one of those things. It's an exciting moment when holy crap, I did something. I made some noises. They may have sounded like crap to me, but they sounded good enough to make this bird come here and, think there was a lonely hen this way. And that's, I don't know, it's exciting for me.
No, I completely agree. Like, the adrenaline starts pumping whenever, like, we were sat right there on our backs to the tree, in a good sitting position, and all we can do is just stare at this turkey. And like when you start hearing it strutting, talk back to you and gobble, you're just waiting, and it's a waiting game at that point, and you're waiting from a distance, and you just want to take the shot, but you got to be smart about it. Like I don't know how you did not just take that shot. I mean, that's what I would have fucking done. Like, hey, dude, you got it. But no, and I appreciate it.
If I hadn't killed a bird the morning before, I maybe would have done that. But I had just killed one the day before. You never killed a turkey, so it was. I was there to try to help you get one, or try to participate in you getting one, not just get a second bird for myself. So it was fun.
I got a dot on my shotgun now, so next spring I'll be good.
Yeah.
and hopefully hopefully next year is a little bit more better than what it was this year. We quickly talked about how turkey numbers are kind of down here in the South. And I mean, I saw one turkey this year, and that was with you. We heard a couple gobble in other areas, but other than that, um, but it's exciting. It's like, I'm gonna get up the next morning at 05 and I'm gonna go sit in the woods and see if I can get something, see if I can hear something. And, you know, um, I think that's where a lot of the motivation comes in, even whenever you start not seeing something. It's just a matter of having that composure to keep going for whenever it can happen.
Yeah, I mean, my season closed in Ohio on the last day of season there with a bird that gobbled 100 times if he gobbled once. And then as I was trying to get closer to him, I kicked the hen up off her nest who flew down to him and took him out of my life forever. But, so that's my motivation for next year is that bird gobbling right until the last, 10 minutes of my hunting season this year, to get me ready for those 05 mornings next year.
So, kind of moving along, what would you say your most memorable hunt was and what made it so special?
There's like 30 of those. So yeah, I guess I'll tell I actually made one turkey hunt last year from Okinawa. I flew back to the U.S. for a short trip I came to Cornerstone, which is the course the Marine Corps does for newly selected sergeant major and battalion and regimental commanders. And I came back to be a mentor for that. And I took a trip down to Georgia while I was there. And my nephew, who was 12 at the time, and the kid absolutely loves hunting. His dad doesn't hunt, and my dad doesn't really turkey hunt, so he's got nobody who can ever take him turkey hunting. And I'll try to tell the shortest version of the story possible, but it may not work. I talked to my parents. I'm like, hey, I need a place to go. Is there somewhere close? You guys are there. See if somebody in the family can give me a small, either take me with them or a small piece of property, and I'll take Corbin, my nephew, with me. And I have a cousin who owns like a couple hundred acres, not too far from my parents' house, as the crow flies, but a few miles driving. I asked them to, he said yes, no problem. And then I flew into Atlanta from DC and I asked my parents, like, hey, somebody stay awake to tell me where I've got to go when I get there, because I don't know that. I get home, nobody's awake. Luckily, the next morning, my mom agrees to wake up with me just to drop me and my nephew off. I get there, no idea what the property lines are. I got this 12-year-old boy who's all excited for his first time ever. I had left a shotgun with my parents. He had my shotgun. I thought I left turkey calls there. I found one mouth call and I think a crow call, and that was it for my call inventory. And I had to look at the property and guess, like, well, I think the property lines were here because it had been recently had some timber cut on it. So I was trying to go off for the timber lines. I had birds gobbling a lot in the morning, just off what I thought was the property line. About 2 hours, an hour and a half in, as I'd make that boy walk the entire property. As you know, I like to walk around turkey hunt and cover some ground. So, he was earning it. And I got a little bit of cell signal, and my dad texted me an hour and a half into the hunt an OnX map screenshot of the property lines with a note that said, hey, the power line that's there, the cousin who owns the property said, you can hunt that power line, just don't cross it. Well, all the birds I'd heard roll around the other side of that power line. So I went right back there, made one call, heard a gobble, had him sit down. And within 5 minutes, there was a bird standing 35 yards from us. But where I'd set my nephew down at, it was to his left, too far for him to turn. And much like with you, I was just thinking I could take this shotgun from this kid to shoot this turkey right now, no problem. But we're going to wait this out. And that turkey sat there and he gobbled once or twice. And then that turkey started walking up the field edge, the edge of the power line, I should say. And my nephew never saw it. And I was like, all right, we'll try to call him back up down this way. And then as I'm sitting there, two more birds pop their heads out. I'm like, oh, this ain't over yet. Here's two more turkeys. And they stick their head out the edge of the field and they kind of look around, don't see what they like. So they start walking up away from us as well. And I'm getting a little bit, my hopes are going down here. And then a fourth bird pops out and he actually walks straight across the field, stops at like 15 yards. And I'm just sitting there trying to whisper to my nephew, like, you need to shoot. You need to shoot. Like, this bird's right here. And, he's 12, hunting with my shotgun with a red dot on it. and he finally gets that bird in the scope, and he nailed him right there. But first time ever being on that property, his first time ever really turkey hunting. Don't have any of the stuff I would normally have, but it all just kind of came together right there at the end. And for him to get his first turkey, it was pretty cool to see and be a part of for him.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah, very cool story. Kind of want to switch a little bit to your professional career. So you're currently the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps Warfighting Lab. What makes that place such a unique place to work? We'll start with that.
Well, I guess first, as a Marine working there, there's it's about 25% active duty Marine that work there, 25% GS civilian, and then 50% contractor. So that's unique in and of itself. But the main thing is just what the lab is doing as far as looking to the future of the Marine Corps and, what future threats may be and how we can deal with that. We maybe talk a bit more detail about what each division does there, but, we have a science and technology division that is actively working to not work on this generation or the next generation of stuff, but one beyond that. Experimentation, where the Marine Corps, all of the infantry battalion experimentation has been run by, with, and through the Warfighting Lab. So to really see kind of the shaping of the infantry battalion of the future has been great. And then wargaming, which really I think is probably the least understood part of that by most Marines, but wargaming helps shape each of the other two by what it does to kind of feed threats into what we can do to respond to that.
Okay. Yeah, very well said. But I'm also aware that it's the first time that they've really had a sergeant major or a command senior enlisted leader since around 2009. What was it like coming from a fleet unit and then stepping into a unit that really wasn't used to your billet? What was it like adjusting to that transition? And how did you find yourself having to kind of shape your role?
Well, I mean, one, I will say they've had Master Gunnery Sergeant since 2009 in the position, and the main difference there is those guys were all 0399, so infantry operations chiefs, and they did great work. I think their focus, as their experience set should have been, was primarily on the infantry battalion stuff. So the one thing for Sergeant Major is looking at some of the other areas there, whether it is wargaming or science and technology. But because of the focus more on experimentation with the infantry battalion, there's other things that I felt I could step in and help out with. I mean, the lab may not be super, well, some of them are. They may not be super excited. I put out all hands emails every so often for a get together for a hero workout or something like that. And, it's funny to see the amount of contractors who show up, and they may want to scale a workout down, but they still want to come do it. So I think the realization for me is that whether they're contractors or GS or Marine, they're honestly still like patriotic Americans who want to do this stuff and want to be a part of the mission. And the main thing for me has been, with the CG, reminding everyone there that no matter what we may be working on or doing for the lab, at the end of the day, it's all there to support probably an 0311, maybe somebody else, but probably an 0311 with a bayonet somewhere at the pointy end of everything, who's got to finish the real fine part of that kill chain that everybody likes to talk about.
I
Absolutely.
got one thing. Whenever next time you put out a hero workout, can you go ahead and email me so I can go out there and join?
I'm doing one next Tuesday morning. I'm doing Bert for Corporal Gettings from 26, who was killed in 06 in Fallujah. So
Yeah.
Tuesday morning, 6:30 meeting at the lab headquarters.
Okay.
So
All right.
Nice. Have fun, Matt.
yeah, we did Mannion the first time around because on the anniversary of Travis Mannion's death.
Yep.
And I'm forgetting the name right now, and I feel bad for that. But I did another one for a Ranger from Fredericksburg in May on the anniversary of his death, and then together with CD and I, we did Murph. I've been gone for the last 2 weeks TAD, so next week will be my first one since coming back with the group.
Yeah, very cool stuff. You've mentioned wargaming multiple times, and I agree with you, right? I've been through EWS and command staff, and I've absolutely people at that level still misunderstand wargaming. But the Warfighting Lab is now in charge of the Neller Center, and it's state of the art and it's brand new. So what are you all at McWill really hoping to get out of this new wargaming experience?
Sure. Well, first, the Neller Centers, we dedicated it a couple weeks ago. It's not capable for operations yet. We're still a ways away from there. There's just a lot of inside the building stuff with networks to go. The main thing for the Neller Center, and you mentioned state of the art, we can do things in there at all classification levels, which may not sound like a big deal, but the advantage of the Neller Center is I can do it at different classification levels within the same war game. So there may not be many Marines in an infantry battalion, for instance, with a TS clearance. The ones who can work the part of the war game that goes to that level, while maybe squad leaders are only up to secret, and they can work in the secret level. Other exciting parts about that facility, though, is some of the software that'll go in. The software will enable some machine learning AI type stuff to really facilitate enemy threat doctrine in the war game. And if you've been to command and staff, you probably did kind of the roll the dice type war game where it's you got a bad roll, so you know the threat missiles took out your ship, or you know they sunk your battleship, or you got a good roll and your countermeasures worked. This will be more machine learning enabled with the potential for threat doctrine there, but I think the bigger thing for not lower levels, but the squad level Marines. I mean, in the day, the base unit of the Marine Corps is still going to be a squad moving. There's stuff we can do there where if a squad does a game together, we can do an after action where it can show, hey, second fire team, when you came up this draw, you came out at this point, which puts you in direct fire of this machine gun. If you had moved 15 more yards, and that can all be a video overlay of where they move to really show them like a live after action, if you will. And that's just for tactical level. There's obviously the high level stuff there as well. But the other thing is, because of the technology in the Neller Center, we're going to get a lot more play from the joint force and also partner agencies, which I think will allow Marines to better understand what the joint force can do to support, but also the joint force understand what Marines are bringing to fight. Because we may fight as a purple joint Department of Defense sometimes, but we don't necessarily understand each other all that well. Mm-hmm. And Neller Center will kind of bridge the gap of understanding, I think, across the joint force.
Real quick, is the Marine Corps looking to do more things in the joint force at this point? Because traditionally Marines have always just worked with Marines, and we haven't really played a huge joint role.
Short answer is absolutely. And I think, we talk, there's everything in the news today about the Pacific. I just came to the Pacific because, as I said, 4th Marines in Okinawa. And what I've never seen joint work as well as I do out there, mainly because I think everyone realizes they're in the first island chain, they're within the weapons engagement zone, and everyone supports each other more out there. And also it's, open source, you can read it, the joint warfighting concept. A lot of what we're doing, whether it's infantry battalion experimentation, whether it's stuff at the Neller Center for Wargaming, is based on the principles of the joint warfighting concept. So the Marine Corps' IBX is based on, using the joint force to support us and us supporting the joint force.
Yeah, it happens more in other parts of the Marine Corps. I was a student at MOTS 1 very early on in my officer career, and the air side of the Marine Corps is very heavily joint, mostly because if we want to request sorties, then we have to give up certain air assets. So yeah, all very interesting stuff. So you've been on the first sergeant major side for a while. Stepping into a new unit, and you've been to a few new units. This is a bit of a retooled question, but what are some cues that you look towards in terms of your CO and the unit you're about to join to get a gauge of their personalities and the overall unit effectiveness?
Ooh, okay. I don't know. There's a lot to unpack with that one. You have to give me a second to think this one through. I guess I'll start with CO, because I do think that CO, or in my case now CG, and the sergeant major relationship is important. And even if you hate each other, you still got to put on a good front to the Marines, so it looks like a good command team. I think it's usually pretty. I'll use my current CG for example. It was an easy kind of kill chain loop to close with him. When as soon as he got there, he made it clear to every single person that anything that was sent to him, I needed to be CC'd on. And that may not seem like a big deal, but it's him reiterating to everyone that he wants me to know everything he knows. Mm-hmm. That's it. That was an easy win. Of course, my CG, he's a pilot, but his son's an 0311 corporal. So I told him that his son's the social climber in the family. That's also a big win. And it helps a lot with some of the McWill stuff. He's passionate about what we're doing at Science and Technology for next gen medical care. He's got a son who's, in the Pacific now. But as far as Marines in the unit, I mean, so when I was in 4th Marines in Okinawa, the rotation for 4th Marines is infantry battalions on 6-month deployments. So I saw a lot of infantry battalions in 2 years. I think 13 battalions rotated through during my tenure there. It was pretty easy to see kind of which ones had leadership that was paying attention to stuff and which ones that may not have had much attention. Easy example there, barracks in Okinawa are relatively old. If I had units showing up with a sergeant major and first sergeant that was coming to me with a list of stuff that was wrong with the barracks, that meant they actually cared and they were getting in there and looking at the stuff right away. If they were asking for new things in the PX, fill in the blank for just basic stuff to show the Marines you give a crap about them, that was a good indicator. And same token, the ones that didn't ask for anything, I know were not perfect, and I know the guys that just moved out didn't think, man, I got to make sure this is perfect before I move out after 6 months of living here. So that probably means you were ignored some stuff there in your time. And I think the sergeant major rank can get a stigma associated with it, a stereotype of only being worried about like haircuts and hands in pockets. But I can also say that, you can, one of the things we have in Okinawa is the ACM mission, kind of the, air alert is the normal a term it's known by a lot. If I go to an air alert rehearsal formation and the Marines are, in some battalions, the Marines showed up to that rehearsal inspection, cami painted up, their bags had, everything was ready to go, everything was packed out looking like it should if they were actually going to load birds and go. That to me indicates a good unit that cares about the mission. If they show up and nobody knows what the mission statement is, nobody's really prepared, there's things left behind in the armory and they couldn't actually be ready to go, and which also means we can inspect it to make sure it's ready for them or support them if it's not ready. That's a different level of kind of real care and desire about the mission. And what that also means is maybe we don't need you to be the first ones responding, and we got to reevaluate who we've got on air alert in a given time. So that's a long-winded answer. I don't know if I really covered it, but covered parts of it there as best I could.
Yeah, I think what I was really getting at is, the higher up you get, the further away you get from the Marines, right? The further away you get from the corporal, lance corporal, and it gets harder to one, have meaningful personal like relationships with Marines and to know everybody like an individual level. But also, I mean, the conversations you have, kind of remind me of some of the ways I've worked with. I've had some really phenomenal, staff NCOs and first sergeants, and the way we would talk about our unit, but we'd also talk about some adjacent command teams and how things are being effective, or things that were working in those other companies and things that might not have been working. So yeah, it's all really interesting. And I think that, the majority of the Marine Corps really isn't privy to those kinds of conversations. So I appreciate you answering it in the depth that you did. So 26 years ago, you started your Marine Corps journey. Did you ever imagine you'd get to where you are today? And I guess the follow-up question is, everyone, everyone looks at folks who've been in over 20 years and kind of assumes that that's where they would have ended up. But was there ever a point at which there would have been a pivot in your career that you just didn't happen to go down that path?
Like every single time. My just short of 4 years, I was in Okinawa on UDP, and I knew I was getting out. I got back from that deployment and took a FAP to the gym to hand out basketballs, and I was living my best life. That didn't work out. I re-enlisted. My second time around, I had actually had some desires and aspirations to try to get out and go to the Army and join the Ranger Regiment. For various reasons, I never committed to that one. Matt mentioned me living in Colorado. I moved out to Colorado thinking I'd retire and live in the Rocky Mountain West. Got offered orders to Okinawa to go back to the infantry to be a regimental sergeant major. That didn't happen. Now I got selected for this position. So yeah, I at no point did I ever think I would stick around this long. But I think the good thing for me, and at least my personal kind of convictions and beliefs in that, is I've also never made it a desire that this had to be what I did. So I've had more fun doing it that way, it's, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
sometimes you get so tied up with the next thing that you're not focusing on the thing you're currently doing. And I definitely see that a lot in the sergeant major world, because there's moves that happen within our ranks.
Right.
But people that are so worried about what they can do to get to their next job forget they got a job to do still, and by kind of always planning on getting out, just not knowing when I'm going to finally execute that plan, I guess it's enabled me to focus on the current job instead of which one I might be thinking I should get next.
Yeah, no, I completely get it because I mean, on the officer side, our careers, the career that gets you to pinning on a star is very scripted, right? You need company command, you need a key billet in major, you need joint, and I think really what you're getting at is the importance of being present, and I think it really ties back into some of the way that you talk about hunting and like really being there with the people that you're hunting with, or just like being observant of your surroundings. I mean, do you see a link there between, right, just enjoying where you're at in your Marine Corps career and also being while you're out there in the woods, just enjoying where you are at that point in your life?
Sure. And I'll back up real quick to your other question about kind of where you talked about how I connect with younger Marines. I still, Lance Corporals are my favorite people. And I don't say that jokingly. Like, they really are great. Like, they'll do
Yeah,
some things to amaze you
yeah,
in both the good and the bad way.
right.
But I think, kind of like reading Tom Kelly's book about the day he doesn't get excited about a turkey coming in close is the day he gives it up. The day I feel like I can't just, if a Marine wants to talk to me, not at least give him a few minutes to talk to him, then that'll be the day that I got to do it, because it really, it shouldn't matter what rank you are, what rank they are. I got it. We've all got our roles we do. But yeah, the whole like being there with them, it's fun to be there and see some of the stuff they do and see how amazing they are. And then sometimes it's fun to get that break from them too and go to the woods and get away from it all. But then it can also be fun to go there with somebody and see them doing the first thing, doing that thing for the first time. And that's whether it's a hunting thing or a Marine who's, when a Marine finds out they got, meritorious sergeant,
Hmm.
like they don't have to know that there's however many hundred meritorious sergeants this month in the Marine Corps. I don't know what that number is. It may not be 100, but for them, it's like the highlight of their time. And I don't know, it's pretty cool to see that excitement in just that one small example for Marines. But yeah, they
Yeah,
help me stay young, I guess. And I like to
absolutely.
beat them. I like to beat them in a PFT. I can't beat them on a 3 mile run. CFT, I can still beat a lot of them in a half mile. So, um,
Yeah,
Well, you
that's
are a giant. I mean, anybody's a giant compared to me.
yeah, just because you can't
uh,
take a full 30-inch step.
that's his long jump.
Yeah.
Jesus, no,
Oh.
I'm not like at Oompa Loompa level here, guys.
Oh, I'm with you though. As I'm getting older, I'm enjoying the trash talk a lot more,
Yeah. Oh
especially
yeah.
being in my 30s, recovering from an Achilles injury. Man, if I'm beating you and you're in your 20s, I'm not going to shut up about it.
Hey, I may take longer to recover, but I'm gonna do all I can to
Oh
beat you while
yeah.
we're doing it.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. It gets harder each and every year, but yeah, if you can't keep up with me, then you're gonna receive some trash talk. But we've talked a lot of interesting things, Chris, and it's been really great to sit here and pick your brain about hunting in the Marine Corps. But at this time, is there anything you'd like to leave the listeners with?
Well, you know what? Since we talked about the Marine Corps some, and I know you're not showing video here, but I will talk. One thing that I think is important, and I think is important because the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps said something in a recent thing I was at that he said is important. So I agree with it, not just because I'm saying it. I think a lot of our Marines now may not be combat veterans, but we do have a lot of those out there, and we talk a lot about the challenges that are associated with recruiting, the all volunteer force, blah blah blah. Um, I think we that are the post 9/11 era GWAT veterans, if you will, need to do more to embrace some of them. I'm wearing my Abate Hero Wad T-shirt and things like Patrol Base Abate, Travis Manion Foundation. I think some of these post 9/11 kind of in memory of veterans charities are great resources for everybody. And I would just tell you, kind of find the one that fits you if you're a veteran or active duty, or find one you can support if you're not a veteran. I think those like tribes, if you will, really bring people together. And also, we talk about the kind of mental health concerns that we talk about this podcast, but I think it's worth bringing up in a minute. I think those things are great for everybody. PB Abate has a hunt club, they have a fishing club, they have a fight club if you want to roll and do jujitsu in Montana, They got a book club if all you want to do is read. But as some examples of things that are out there, point being, if you're serving somewhere or want to help somebody serving somewhere, there's an organization that can help you find something, a niche to fit in with. So look for that, find it, enjoy it, and it's also I don't want to scare anybody who thinks Marines eat crayons, but it's okay to read a few books and learn some stuff from that as well. So
Those crayons disappeared off that photo frame, Matt. Oh no, they're still there. I was like, oh, okay. That's your emergency supply, bro. You can't.
yeah,
You gotta,
we gave a whole box. We gave a whole box of crayons to the Air Force Chief Master Sergeant that was at a course I was attending the last couple of weeks. So, and it did not look like the box was full the next day. So I don't know. It might be the Air Force that eats
Well,
crayons.
so when you're gifting crayons to someone in the Air Force, what brand? Because like quality matters, right? They're used to the good stuff.
Well, sure, it was Crayola.
Okay. All right.
Not a.
If you gave him if you gave him Rose Arts, he probably just would have chucked them in the trash.
Yeah, it wasn't like a Dollar General store brand or anything.
You got to go to Cracker Barrel and give them the Cracker Barrel versions.
It's been a long time since I've been to a Cracker Barrel, so.
No, speaking of some of the veteran organizations, just gonna kind of re-hit because July 13th is coming up. It's about 4 weeks away, just under. There is the Generation GWAT 3-gun match down in North Carolina at the Zoo City Range. I'm not entirely sure how many spots that they still have available, but if you are looking to get into competition, find that family, just learn something different. For $40, they're going to provide the ammo, they're going to provide the guns, they have gift bags, random draw prizes, everything. You're going to walk out there with more than what you spent, and a network of people that you can call upon, if you have something going on. So, like Chris said, family matters, and family is not just by blood. Family is by those who you surround yourself with. So like if you're going through stuff, you have to have that network and that connection with people to kind of keep going. You can't just rely on yourself all the time. I certainly don't. Like Frank is one of the people I call whenever I have stuff going on, and then there's other people as well that I can rely upon. You can't just go through life by yourself, putting yourself in a shell. Rely on some of these organizations out there because they truly do care and they truly do want to help.
Yeah, all very well said. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. A little bit different from what we usually cover. But it was about the Marine Corps. It was about hunting. It's about guns. It all rolls under the same umbrella. So let us know how we're doing, and we'll see you on the next one.